I wonder how many people who are affected by conflict in our parts of the world, where we come, where all these amazing people come, actually care about what we talk about. But I'm hoping that this conversation will eventually change their life. Because war and destruction is probably not easy, but fast. You can just kill people and win. Now, what does that win mean is a different story. But to build peace, to build coexistence, to build a culture of tolerance, that takes time, patience, and a very dedicated group of people to work towards that and demonstrate leadership. I thank you, where is Sarah, for the opportunity. It's true that International Day of Peace today and this week meant to be about unity and about culture of nonviolence. But today, in the International Day of Peace, the world has become a crazy place. There is more war and conflict across the world today than ever before. The war and conflict does not only affect a specific country or a specific region, but it affects all of us, our economy, the migration, geopolitics, and above all, it affects the world order. The challenges are vast. From wars in Palestine, Israel, you just heard, to Sudan, which you just heard, to Ukraine, which you just heard, to many other places that we haven't heard, but to the humanitarian and human rights crisis in Afghanistan and beyond. In many ways, these conflicts reflect deeper issues of injustice and inequality in the world. However, I stand today before you not to give a lecture. I stand today before you representing a nation that fought for 5 decades for peace. Yes, indeed. We fought and we continue to fight for peace. It probably doesn't make sense because peace and fight don't come along together. We were in war for 5 decades and we continue to experience war for peace, for coexistence, for living with each other. Some might argue that after the return of Taliban, Afghanistan have become a safer country. Somehow peace in a different form, in the absence of active war. Although there is, the active war does not get reports to the media, but there is war in some parts of Afghanistan. But some might argue that there is no active war, so Taliban at least managed to bring some level of peace and security. For us, for my people, for the women of Afghanistan especially, for the people of Afghanistan, peace is not just the absence of war. Peace is beyond that. For us, peace is for the people of Afghanistan, for women, peace is not just the absence of conflict. Peace encompasses justice, freedom, well-being, and the ability to breathe without the fear of being beaten up for your gender. But as I said, we fought and we continue to fight. Our fight continues in different forms. Our struggle is our fight. It continues in different form. We negotiated with Taliban. That was a fight for us. We looked at their eyes and we challenged their narrative of Islam, which is a self-defined narrative of suppression and has no place in our religion. We looked at their eyes and we challenged them. It was a fight for us. For the first time in Afghanistan history, In 2020, 4 women were part of the peace negotiations. I looked at the Taliban eyes and I said, what you do is in fact creating more Islamophobia than what, from your definition, the infidels do to Islam. The ones who were actually looking at me from the other side of the table did not have any sort of education, let alone Islamic education. I negotiated with the Taliban because we need to do that, to represent equality. For many years, and until now, the Taliban continue to deny women as equal rights holder citizens. So I sat across the table with them and I said, we exist, and I try to demonstrate equality. I try to demonstrate coexistence, because coexistence is the prerequisite of a pluralistic society. I try to tell them that Afghanistan has transformed, that Afghanistan today is not Afghanistan 1996 when they first came to power and they tried to erase women. Today, Afghanistan has many millions of educated men and women, some of them are here among the audience, who are able to stand and fight for their rights. In fact, throughout the history, women in Afghanistan have stood up for their rights. You know what? Probably will be surprised for you. Women in Afghanistan had the right to vote before women in Switzerland got that right to vote. So we stood for our rights throughout the history. We fought, we got it, we lost, we failed, we stood up again. Because that's what working for justice and women's rights and human rights is. It's a lonely fight. It looks, for those who are working in this field, don't get disappointed. It looks as if you are climbing a mountain. All of a sudden, you think that you have got somewhere where it's safer and you don't have to climb again. But you face yet another mountain ahead of you. That's how hard working for human rights, a society where the diversities are embraced is. But that peace talk failed. You know why? Because the narrative was imposed on us. It was a narrative that was created by Taliban, and some of their sympathizers empowered it, promoted it, and that was a narrative that Taliban have changed. And that there is Taliban 2.0, that they want to allow women to go to school, go to university, that they accept the diversity of Afghanistan. But in reality, when the Taliban came, the first person that they put under house arrest was me, somebody who was negotiating with them. We not only resist in these amazing stages, we resist and struggle in the streets of Kabul. Despite all the challenges, the women of Afghanistan continue to stand for their rights. We resist in going to the offices, despite the ban on women work. The girls in Afghanistan resist in their own way by going to education institutions, some form of education institutions. Now, you know, universities and schools are banned for them because everything in Afghanistan is banned for women, from work to education, to using the public places, using gyms, using parks. And recently, you know what? They told women not to speak in public because their voice is regarded as intimacy. But despite all of that, women protest, they resist, they demonstrate their resilience. Now we have learned our lessons. We have learned, despite our resistance and challenge, we also want to lead a political narrative. We want to lead a peaceful solution for Afghanistan. We want to create our own narrative this time. We do not want our narrative to be translated from English or French or Germany or Arab or, I don't know, Arabic, any other language to our beautiful languages. We want to craft our own narrative and lead it. We just want all of you to support us. Not to act on our behalf, not to lead us, but support us. Women's rights crisis is not the only crisis in Afghanistan. Today, extrajudiciary killing of former government officials, arbitrary detention of journalists, of activists, suppression of religious minorities, suppression of ethnic groups, linguistic groups, erasing Afghanistan from the diplomatic stage and taking Afghanistan back to Stone Day and Age is what Taliban do. That's what all the military extremist groups do. They stand against education because they think an educated mother will never allow his son to pick up a gun and fight for his rights through violent means. An educated mother will teach her children to use pen, to use words, because our words are our moral power. An educated mother will use her children to use that moral power to change. And that's why these military extremist groups target education. Because you kill a nation, you commit genocide, a second generation will come. But when you suppress an education, a nation from, and deprive them from education, that takes ages to comprehend and to replace and to catch up. That's what happened to me. When Taliban first came, I was a medical college student. I wanted to become a medical doctor, but they stopped me from going to school, and together with me, millions of other girls. I didn't want my daughters to experience the same. I didn't want this young generation, these amazing women, to experience the same. That's why we wanted to have a peaceful solution for the conflict in Afghanistan. But because of the wrong politics of the international community, I am not escaping from my responsibility as a politician or as an activist. But because of the mistakes of primarily the international community, because of their wrongdoings, we collectively failed. And it was a moral failure of international community, what is happening in Afghanistan and what has happened. That's why we want to create our own narrative. Recently, for instance, through an organization called Women for Afghanistan, we managed to bring 140 women from inside Afghanistan, from the villages, from across the world, in Albania, to see what can we do as women to change the status quo, to change the situation, to make Afghanistan a country for all. I think every war is ugly. Although it's not even, war is not banned and prohibited in the UN Charter. But every war is ugly. But the war against women in Afghanistan that the Taliban launched is the ugliest war, because they target women for their gender. Now, can you imagine if women had that power to deprive men from what they're supposed to do? What would the reaction be? What would the reaction of the neighbors would be? What would the global solidarity be? But in the case of Afghanistan, we think it's normal. We think it's part of their culture. We think it's part of their religion. They deserve that. We think we have done our job for 20 years. No, my friends, you did not do your job. You fought Taliban, and then all of a sudden you left Afghanistan. You didn't do in between, which is helping people of Afghanistan fulfill what they want to fulfill for their country. Millions of women in Afghanistan, 17 million plus in Afghanistan, they often ask all of us, why is the international community thinking that it's okay to erase women completely from the public and social spheres? Why it's okay for the Taliban to violate international law and humanitarian law, and the world gets away with it? Why is the world implementing laws selectively? Isn't the world rule of law and order and the institutions that are created to make those violating the power, misusing their power, accountable? If yes, why are we implementing that selectively? And this is a valid question. It raises concerns. The fact that the world does not take action raises serious concerns about ineffectiveness of international rule and order. We need to make them we need to make these institutions work effectively. So the woman message to all of you, I know there are diplomats here, and I know thousands of people who listen to us, probably, and I know many other people with good hearts who are here. The message from the women of Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan, is clear. What they want from you, help them lead their own narrative for a change in their country, first. Second, to the feminist foreign policy ministers, to the Muslim majority countries, to every man and woman with a good heart, with a heart that believes the world should be a better place. Their message is, make these international accountability mechanisms work. Codify some of the issues that are recent. Gender apartheid is a recent phenomenon in Afghanistan. Apartheid is not, but gender apartheid. And for us, gender apartheid is even not a political term. It's a reality. That's why I said we fight for peace. We fight for coexistence. If you do not stand in solidarity and listen and contribute to what people of Afghanistan want and women especially want, today we are the victim. Tomorrow, all of you will be the victim, because discrimination knows no border. And they say only where there is a flame, a fire, will know the pain of burn. We know how it feels to be burned. I hope it doesn't come to any border, but let's stop it before it comes to any border. Thank you.